Happy New Year to everybody. Vietnam certainly finished the year with a very bullish sentiment, mainly driven by local investors. Unlike other countries, the strong momentum reflects the current outperformance of the country's macroeconomics, which are expected to remain strong throughout 2021. We can certainly speak of a full-blown bull market. Hi, my name is Andreas Vogelsanger. I'm the CEO of the AFC Vietnam Fund. The index in Ho Chi Minh advanced by around plus 10% in December alone, and our NAV from the AFC Vietnam Fund increased by plus 12.7%. So we certainly had a very nice year end in our fund, and the overall performance of the fund throughout 2020 was over 27%, net to investors, of course. So, what were the main drivers? On one hand, as we mentioned in the past, it is the change of leadership from growth to value stocks, which seems finally to be underway. When stocks, the market environment went sour during the spring and valuations of our stock went from cheap to super cheap, we reevaluated the risks of our portfolios, but we are pretty relaxed given that the valuations are really quite attractive. We would have much harder time to remain optimistic if we would have been invested in loss-making stocks or highly priced stocks, which seems to be the favorite investments of many funds around the world. But with our harmonic PE, so price earnings ratio of around 8.7 times, I think we can be pretty confident that the valuations is really very attractive, even in an international context. With so many undervalued stocks in our portfolio, the NAV of our fund would need to increase 100% from today in order to be in line with the market average, which itself is not expensive compared to other markets. And the VN index, so the Vietnam index, which is the main index, is still 9% below its high, which it reached in April 2019. So we'll see in 2021 if we finally see a new all-time high in the VN index. Let's certainly hope so. As I said, the Vietnamese market, also compared to other markets, is still attractive with a PER, so price earnings ratio, of 17.6 times, compared to other countries such as Thailand, for example, which is 24.7 times, Indonesia 28.5 times, Malaysia 23 times, Singapore 21 times, and the Philippines 28.4 times. So another driver why suddenly liquidity increased sharply and the market really had a fantastic run so far and is continuing actually in the new year is all these new local investors which are coming on board. And when we look at new opened accounts, we have only statistics for up to November last year, but it reached 328,000 of new brokerage accounts opened in Vietnam, mainly by local investors. So this is quite a staggering number, and that obviously helps to drive liquidity. So the liquidity was on average around 470 million per day in December, which is on par with other ASEAN markets such as Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia or the Philippines. So Vietnam is certainly catching up. And one other important factor is certainly the positive development which can be seen from investments being driven by social and environmental forces. So as I mentioned in our last report, we now include ESG factors in our investment process. ESG stands for environmental, social and governance. Companies which fit ESG criteria are well equipped to manage risks and operate in a sustainable manner in the future. Attractive investments on its own rights, one could argue. So we think that long-term benefits for the country and its people are substantial, and that's the reason why we decided, as mentioned in our last report, that we started integrating environmental, social and governance factors into our investment process. So maybe to be a little bit more concrete, what does that mean? For us, we decided to include two factors which we judge our companies in the environmental sector. So in the environmental sector we look at resource use, so which reflects the performance and capacity to reduce the use of materials, energy or water, and to find more eco-efficient solutions by improving the chain management. And then also we include emissions. So emissions obviously measures the commitment and effectiveness towards reducing environmental emissions. Then on the social side we have three factors which we look at: workforce, community and product responsibility. So the workforce measures the effectiveness of job satisfaction, human rights, gender equality, happiness and safety at workplace, all these kind of things. Then community looks at the contribution to community, such as contribution to charities, helping maybe people which are less fortunate, all that comes into play. Then product responsibility measures the effectiveness in terms of quality of goods and services, integrating customers' health and safety and data privacy, for example. Then we have two more factors which we look at in the governance sector. So one of them is management. So we look at the management, for example, measures the commitment and effectiveness towards the best practices in corporate governance principles, for example, and shareholders, that measures the effectiveness towards equal treatment of shareholders, the use of anti-takeover measures, and how the board consists, for example, are there any female members in the board, all these kind of things. So once we measured all our companies with a scale from 1 to 10, we then measure the overall average score per company, and we have a great comparison per sector, which are the leaders in which sectors, are they basically trying to improve over time. So all this are quite important data. One obviously would argue that Vietnam is still at the very beginning and there are not that many data around, which is absolutely correct. But more and more we see companies are reporting in sustainable reports more accurate measures and data, so it becomes more and more easier to compare. Now at the beginning, yes, it's still difficult, but it's a good start, and already now we see remarkable differences. So of course we want to invest in the leaders of ESG, and that's our aim. So, and we want to also help these companies to improve. So for example, we send them questionnaires and tell them, could you rate yourselves in these 8 factors? And so we give them a certain impulse to show them also that international investors such as us care for these measurements and these factors, and that's important for us when we invest. So they will hopefully also start changing into that direction if they haven't done it yet. So, and when they come back with their scores, what they think they rate themselves in these the various 8 factors, we'll then have a constructive discussion with them why we think the same or why we differ, and hopefully both of us, the companies and ourselves, we can learn something about how to improve even more. Okay, that's all from us. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I speak to you in end of January, beginning of February with our next report. Thank you. Goodbye.